Listen to me, I'm gonna divorce you. Facing my adamant refusal, Jack blurted that out. Next to him, Catherine was saying, "Please take care of us soon." I thought I had been devoted to Jack and Catherine, but apparently, I was mistaken. For them, living together seemed to be the ultimate act of filial piety. I've been turning down the idea of cohabitation for about 5 years, but it seems I've reached my limit. I do as Jack says and pack my things to leave the house. A few days later, I received hundreds of calls from Jack. My name is Natalie. I'll be turning 48 this year. Jack and I have been married for about 20 years. We weren't head over heels in love even when we were dating. Jack seemed indifferent to romance, and I didn't think he was that interested in it. We have one child, but he's already moved out, so it's just Jack and I in the house. Jack has a rather dominating personality, a tad intimidating. But given my laid-back nature, I never really minded his quirks too much. We've been together since high school, and though I hesitated when Jack proposed, I eventually decided to marry him. In the early days of our marriage, I was a stay-at-home wife, taking care of the household and attending to tasks given by my in-laws. After some time, our child was born, and the enthusiastic grandparents would often visit our place. Initially, I was told that living with in-laws was off the table. I wouldn't want to live with my parents always around. It'd be stifling. We're never gonna live with them. I believed those words and decided to marry Jack. However, as our child grew older, out of the blue, Jack proposed living with his parents. Sure, our child became more independent, and in a few years, he'd be off to college. But I was against the idea of living with my in-laws, and I made it clear every time the subject came up. We had several discussions about cohabitating, and I rejected them all. Every time, Jack would become grumpy. Maybe he thought I'd eventually agree? There were mainly 2 reasons why I didn't want to live together. Firstly, I didn't get along with my mother-in-law, Catherine. Shortly after our marriage, I was often summoned to my in-laws' place. Since I wasn't working at that time, I'd always rush over if they needed any assistance. But even when I hurried, Catherine would complain, "You're late. How long do you think I've been waiting? The TV isn't working, please check it." And it wouldn't even be urgent matters. At first, it felt like minor nuisances, but over time her actions escalated. During a family gathering, everyone was served lunch except for me. They had ordered sushi for the day, and there wasn't any for me. So, I had no choice but to eat alone at a nearby diner. As Catherine's blatant acts of hostility increased, I tried discussing it with Jack once. "I think your mom has been giving me a hard time." I was hesitant to talk about it, but can you maybe speak to her? I tried to approach it gently, but Jack took it as criticism. Feeling that I had insulted his mother, he got furious and gave me the cold shoulder for a while. That made it even harder for me to confide in him. From that point on, I felt Jack's attitude towards me changed. He was never the type to help around the house, but he used to assist when I asked. However, after discussing Catherine, he started ignoring even my simplest requests. While I kept refusing the cohabitation, Jack's mood worsened even more. Not only did his demeanor change drastically, but he also began coming home late and even hinted at having an affair. Not only did Jack's attitude change drastically, but he also stopped coming home. Moreover, he even began to make comments hinting at infidelity. "I'm going out for drinks with a lady tonight, so I'll be late," Jack would say, only to return home the next afternoon. This went on for about 4 years. Even if the love is waning, no one can stand being treated like that by their spouse. I became so worn out that even my kids began to worry about me. My friends also started telling me, "You look thin. I mean, more worn out. You should eat properly and get some rest." Although I knew I needed to do something, I couldn't bring myself to act. That's when a friend approached me with a job offer at her flower shop. One of my friends owned the shop and had a vacancy. She thought it might help lift my spirits. When I told Jack and Catherine about my new job, they casually remarked, "It's good you're working. We need to support ourselves." That's true. We could live on Jack's salary, but I'd feel better knowing Natalie has an income, Catherine chimed in. Of course, I planned to contribute to household expenses since I lived with Jack. But that doesn't mean I'm doing it for Jack or Catherine. Working at the flower shop lightened my mood, and people began to say I looked happier. When I was a stay-at-home mom, I felt down dealing with Jack and Catherine all the time. However, interacting with various people at the shop made me realize how much I enjoyed working. This newfound happiness made me less inclined to go home. I'd often lie to Jack about working late, just to avoid seeing him, or go out to dinner with friends. This went on for about a year. About 5 years after we started discussing living together, Jack called me for a talk. He began pointing out that I had been spending a lot of time outside, my spending habits had become reckless since I started working, and I wasn't doing household chores anymore. Then, he stated that someone as lazy as me was not needed in the house. To add insult to injury, he said he would forgive everything if I agreed to move in with him. I firmly refused as usual. But just then, Catherine, probably waiting in the next room, burst in. "Why are you so against moving in? Did I do something wrong?" she smirked. Jack defended her, saying Catherine hadn't done anything and that it was just my bad attitude. I reiterated my decision not to move in with them, but it seemed they didn't get the message. Jack threatened, "You better start listening, or I'm gonna file for divorce." Catherine jumped in, "Please take care of us soon." Though I had endured so much, that day was the last straw. While I kept things calm at the moment, the next day, I decided to pack my things and leave the house. I waited until I was sure Jack was at work to make my move. I couldn't take everything, so I packed only the essentials. Contemplating where to go, I realized my only option was to turn to my parents. When I called them, they were happy to come pick me up. Honestly, I thought my mom would be angry, since she'd previously urged me to get married. However, after explaining the situation, she told me to come back. A few hours after the call, my parents arrived in a large van. Apparently, they had rented a big vehicle just for this. Feeling loved, I decided to move all my belongings out. That night, I received a call from Jack, who probably had finished work. "Hey, I noticed your stuff is gone from the house. You're not actually thinking of getting a divorce, are you?" he said. I let him know that's exactly what I was planning. I pointed out that the business card of a divorce attorney was on the table and told him from now on to communicate through the lawyer. Jack was livid. "Where are you now? Come back. I'll teach you a lesson," he started shouting threats. I've never experienced physical violence from Jack before, but this time, it might be best not to talk to him directly. Caught off guard by the mention of a lawyer, Jack hesitated for a moment but soon started throwing insults again. I could hear Catherine in the background, yelling, "Forget about her. I'll find someone even better for you. If you get divorced now, you can choose from a bunch of girls." Catherine probably doesn't know what's gonna happen to Jack next. However, if she agrees to a divorce in any form, it's convenient for me. Jack started listening to Catherine's words, and seemed to be leaning towards the idea of a divorce. And then, he said, "You sure you want to divorce me? You ain't gonna find another good man like me anytime soon," and hung up the phone. After that, there was no contact from Jack or Catherine, and I enjoyed a moment of peace at my parents' house. The flower shop where I work is managed by a friend, and thanks to their consideration, I was allowed to take some time off. At my parents' house, I enjoyed my mom's home-cooked meals and had a drink in the evening with my dad, forgetting the bad stuff. However, I guess Jack got a call from the lawyer because he started calling me angrily again. I told him to communicate through the lawyer, but did he not listen? The reason why Jack kept contacting me was clear. I had gathered evidence that would be beneficial for me during the divorce. For a long time, Jack often hinted at cheating. I was initially shocked, but I had a feeling we might divorce someday, so I recorded conversations just in case. He wasn't actually cheating, but it was true he went out for dinner with another woman. This was confirmed by a local private investigator. With this information alone, it wasn't enough to claim he cheated, but because I had his recorded statements, I could present it as evidence of his affair. Jack was furious about this and kept calling me. I didn't need to be in touch with Jack anymore, but I couldn't help but wonder how he'd react, so I answered the phone. The first thing he blurted out was, "What the heck is this? I haven't cheated on you. Where's the evidence, huh? Is this some kind of fabrication? Cut the crap." Do you enjoy tarnishing my reputation? And you want to claim compensation for the emotional stress I've supposedly caused you? If anything, I should be the one asking. He was shouting at the top of his lungs. He was so loud that his voice distorted and I couldn't hear some parts. Given how aggressive Jack was, I expected he'd be reluctant about the divorce. But a few days later, for some reason, he easily agreed to it. The reason being, Catherine ended up covering the compensation fee. I was surprised that Catherine had that kind of money, but if it meant he'd agree to the divorce, it wasn't an issue. I decided to accept the offer from Jack's side. After consulting with my attorney, we ended up slightly reducing the compensation amount. But it can't be helped. It's common to ask for a bit more initially and then reduce the amount later, to make it easier for the other party to accept. Just when I thought I could finally get the compensation and get divorced, it seems it won't be that easy. Just when the divorce seemed to be finalized, Jack decided to return to his in-laws' place. But when he got there, he found Catherine and her father, Kenneth, fighting. The reason was Catherine's affair. Jack, who happened to be there, got an earful from Kenneth as well. "Are you two kidding me? Even though you have your life partners, you let your hearts be stolen by someone else. I've been patient till now, but I can't take it anymore. Both of you, get out." "No. I haven't cheated on anyone. If you say I have, show me the evidence." Catherine was defiant against Kenneth, but she was speechless when Kenneth showed her the photos. The photos showed Catherine arm in arm with her lover. Catherine had no words when presented with the undeniable evidence. On the other hand, Jack said, "I didn't cheat. This is something Natalie did on her own. The evidence shown is fake. It's a frame-up. There's no need to kick me out too." But Kenneth wasn't hearing any of it. Their argument was so loud, the entire neighborhood could hear it. Or so I heard later from a friend who lived nearby. They say like father, like son, but this seemed too much. Just like me, Kenneth had gathered evidence of Catherine's infidelity. Unlike Jack, Catherine really did cheat. She had been cheating for about 5 years, and Kenneth had noticed a while ago. Once he realized, he hired a private investigator and gathered evidence of her infidelity. Not only did Kenneth have photos of Catherine cheating, but he also had emails with content suggesting an affair. Catherine wasn't good with smartphones and hadn't set a password, so it was possible to gather the emails as evidence. Later, given our similar situations, I had a chance to talk with Kenneth. That's when he showed me the photos he used as evidence. The photos I received from the private investigator were pretty clear and showed evidence of cheating. Just having their arms around each other isn't enough proof, but the content of the texts clearly showed infidelity. From my own experience, I understood how important evidence really is. My lawyer even said, having evidence puts you in a significantly better position. In Natalie's case, there are recordings, so even if there wasn't actual cheating, it proves that the marital relationship has severely broken down. You can definitely get a divorce. The difference between me and Kenneth was whether we were considering divorce. By the time I had gathered enough evidence, I was already prepared for the possibility of divorce. However, even after Kenneth found proof of infidelity, he continued with his married life. He said he continued the marriage because of the deep bond formed over the years they spent together. After the divorce, when Kenneth told me this, it reminded me of how I felt. When you spend years with someone, there's a point where you realize you're together more out of habit than love. If both parties communicate well during these times, it's probably not an issue. In reality, couples who've been together for years, or married couples who've been together for decades, communicate well. Kenneth and I just chose the wrong partners and couldn't manage that. Jack had a hard time with Shuji and Catherine, but in the end, the two were thrown out of their home. Having nowhere to go, they reluctantly ended up in a monthly apartment. It seems like Jack and Catherine were quite alike, often spending recklessly at convenience stores and buying unnecessary branded items. That's why they had hardly any savings when they were evicted. The reason I knew about their lack of savings is because they begged me to lend them money for the monthly apartment's rent. I had already divorced Jack and hadn't received any alimony from him, so I didn't lend him any money. So, if they could afford a monthly apartment, they must have borrowed money from relatives or acquaintances. However, monthly apartments have month-to-month contracts, so they'll have to leave after a month. Right now, people are keeping their distance from Jack. The reason is that I told everyone about what Jack did. Jack and I had been dating since our college days, so we had many mutual friends. Coincidentally, soon after our divorce, I was invited to a reunion. At the reunion, there were updates on everyone's lives, and I was asked about what I was doing now and how things were with Jack. I didn't think lying was right, and I had nothing to hide, so I honestly reported everything Jack and Catherine had done. Some classmates had lent money to Jack and were angry about the way he approached them. That guy always has an excuse for not paying back. I lent him $1,000 thinking of our old friendship. Guess I'll have to write that off. But I never imagined he'd do something so terrible to Natalie. I wish she had confided in us, one said, while also taking my side. Since then, my interaction with friends increased, and Jack lost his. Having no one left to borrow from, Jack began visiting supermarkets late at night, looking for half-priced ready-made meals. The reason I know this is because I ran into him at a supermarket just before closing. Jack kept walking back and forth in the deli section, waiting for the half-price stickers to be applied. Finally, when they did put half-price stickers on the meals, Jack headed to the cashier. But it seemed he didn't have enough money, even with the discount. "Can't you just discount it by a few cents? It's no big deal. If the cashier can't be flexible, I'm gonna complain," he shouted and stormed out of the store. I didn't want to bump into him, so I waited for a while before leaving. But even after 30 minutes, Jack was still outside the supermarket. There was someone there arguing with him. "Why couldn't you buy it? It's strange. I'm starving, and I haven't eaten anything today. Do something and get some food." The person arguing with Jack was Catherine. From their conversation, it seemed they were struggling even to eat that day. Trying not to be noticed, I pulled my hat down further and left the supermarket. After finalizing my divorce with Jack, I decided to re-enter the workforce. I was really surprised when I found a company willing to hire me on a contract basis at my age. I made up my mind to work hard to give back to this company. I had always thought I wasn't cut out for work, but as I tackled challenges head-on, I began to receive positive feedback. Most of my managers in the department are younger than me, but thanks to their thorough training, I can see my skills growing. Initially, I was just a contractor, but recently they approached me about becoming a full-time employee. With a full-time position, there'll be more opportunities and challenges. And naturally, I'll earn more money. I've been saving up since my single days, enough to afford a house. Now that I've divorced Jack, I don't plan on remarrying. So, I decided to buy a condo when I got the promotion. In the past, I bumped into Jack and Catherine at a local Walmart, so part of my reason for moving was to avoid running into them. If we live in the same area, we might bump into each other again. As of now, Jack hasn't tried to reconcile or asked for money, but you never know. Friends and family advised me to move as far away as possible. The new place is a bit far from work, but it's well connected, so I can easily go shopping downtown. The condo is just right for a single person like me, not too big, but spacious enough. Now, I'll have to work even harder to pay off my mortgage. But, after living there for about 6 months, I started to feel a bit lonely. I don't plan to remarry, and it's a bit too small for roommates. Just when I was pondering this, I found a stray kitten outside my apartment. I decided to watch it for a while, thinking its mother might show up. I thought the mother cat might show up and take the kitten away at some point, but the next day, the kitten was still in the same spot outside my apartment building, crying just like the day before. With winter approaching, I couldn't bear the thought of it freezing outside, so after consulting with my building manager, I decided to adopt it. The building allows pets, and as long as I take care of it, there's no issue. This playful kitten runs to me as soon as I get home. She's not picky with food and often snuggles into my bed during cold mornings. I wasn't particularly fond of cats before, but now I can't imagine life without her. I even show off her pictures at work, and I'm always talking about how she's the cutest. They say my child is the cutest, and I find myself oddly agreeing with that. I have a few friends who also have cats, so it's reassuring to know I can ask them for advice. These days, I look forward to coming home to my waiting cat.